Hello, I'm Dr. Muhammad Asif. I welcome you to my channel. In this video, I will discuss critical history of humanist thought, focusing on foundational quotations, starting from Cicero to the very present day, that is the age of post-humanism. I will start with Marcus Tullius Cicero. As you know that he was a great Roman orator. He is famous for rhetoric and he is regarded as pioneer of humanism. Let's start with one of his quotations. A room without books is like a body without a soul. So, in this comment or quotation, he talks about the importance of reading and he equates books with soul. It's not enough to acquire wisdom, it's necessary to employ it. So, this also shows that he was practical in his approach, he was pragmatic. He did not talk of wisdom for the sake of wisdom, rather, he talked of wisdom for the sake of employing it in everyday life. Read at every weight, read at all hours, read within layer, read in times of labor, read as one goes in, read as one goes out. It means that his primary motto was to promote reading, that everybody should read, and reading can make a big difference in the lives of individuals, societies, and countries. The task of the educated mind is simply put, read to lead. As I discussed earlier, that he was practical in his approach, that he did not talk of reading for pleasure or wisdom just for the sake of wisdom. Rather, he talked of reading for leading. It means that educated people, they must lead the society. Francisco Petrarca, commonly anglicized as Petrarch, was an Italian scholar and poet during the early Italian Renaissance. He was a devoted classical scholar who is considered the father of humanism, a philosophy that helped spark the Renaissance. He traveled throughout the Europe and he is credited with discovering classical books and introducing classics to the Italians. And in this way, he became responsible for the beginning of Renaissance in Europe. As Petrarch learned more about the classical period, he began to venerate that era and rail against the limitations of his own time. Though he felt that he lived amid varied and confusing storms, Petrarch believed that humanity could once more reach the heights of past accomplishments. The doctrine he espoused became known as humanism and formed a bridge from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. So, here is one of his important quotations. There was a time, there was an age that was happier for poets, an age when they were held in the highest honor, first in Greece and then in Italy, and especially when Caesar Augustus held imperial sway, under whom there flourished excellent poets, Virgil, Varius, Ovid, Horace, and many others. So, in this quotation, we find Petrarch appreciating the Greeks and Romans, their poets and their generals. And he shows his longing for that time period when there was excellence writ large on every aspect of human life. I cannot have a sufficiency of books. Indeed, I have more than I should. Books give utter delight. They talk with us and are bound to us by lively and witty intimacy, and do not just insinuate themselves alone on their readers, but present the names of others, and each one creates a longing for another. In this quotation, we find Petrarch talking as on similar vein as we found Cicero, that he talks about his love for books and he thinks that everybody should read books, that one should have an intimate relation with the books. Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, he was a young philosopher and he is considered to be the pioneer of the Renaissance humanism, and his essay Oration on the Dignity of Man is considered one of the landmarks in this regard. In this essay, he talks about the centrality of man in this universe. So let's start with his first quotation. I have read in Arabian books that nothing in the world can be found that is more worthy of admiration than man. So we find that Mirandola focuses on man. And in his famous essay on the dignity of man, he addresses human beings on behalf of God, as if God were talking to human beings. He says, I have placed thee at the center of the world. So he is talking on behalf of the God and saying that God has placed human beings at the center of the world. Neither heavenly nor earthly, neither mortal nor immortal have we made thee. Thou, like a judge appointed for being honorable, art the molder and maker of thyself. Thou mayest sculpt thyself into whatever shape thou dost prefer. So this shows Mirandola's faith in man, in human beings, in humanity, and he believes that human beings they can make their own destiny, or in other words, character is destiny. Human beings can shape the life they want to live. Next, very important philosopher, social historian, cultural historian is Jacob Burckhardt. He was a Swiss and he is considered to be the first person who gave a very comprehensive manifesto of humanism. Burckhardt speaks of humanism not just as an educational curriculum, but as a broader cultural phenomena, and he hints at the potential conflict with the Christian church. So we notice that this is for the first time that somebody talked of the conflict between church and the humanists openly and explicitly. Burckhardt says nothing in the world is better suited to laziness than orthodoxy. So he considers orthodoxy a mere laziness. This shows his secular bent of mind. He further says, thus, what the word Renaissance really means is new birth to liberty, the spirit of mankind recovering consciousness and the power of self determination, recognizing the beauty of the outer world and of the body through art, liberating the reason in science and the conscience in religion, restoring culture to the intelligence, and establishing the principle of political freedom. So, in this quotation, we find all the elements of humanism, covering both its secular roots and its focus on classical learning and liberating human beings from the clutches of religion to the ideal of political freedom. The key terms that he uses are here self determination, beauty of the outer world, liberating the reason in science, like conscience in religion, and restoring culture to the intelligence, and more importantly, establishing principle of political freedom. John Addington Symonds, he wrote a famous book, The Renaissance in Italy, in 1877. He says, the essence of humanism consisted in new and vital perception of the dignity of man as a rational being apart from theological determinations, and in further perception that classical literature alone displayed human nature in the plenitude of intellectual and moral freedom. In this quotation, we find some new terms, some new aspects added to humanism, like dignity of man as rational being, and then perception that classical literature alone displayed human nature. Focus shifted to human nature, and further, earlier Burckhardt talk of political freedom. Here we find mention of intellectual and moral freedom as well. Bertrand Russell, of course, the most important humanist and atheist and a very popular philosopher who always talked against religion, especially in his essay, Why I Am Not a Christian. He says, I would never die for my beliefs because I might be wrong. So he did not believe in established faith. And he was a great promoter and preacher of science. He believed in science. He believed that science could solve all the problems of existence. He says, science can teach us, and I think our own hearts can teach us. No longer to look around for imaginary sports, no longer to invent allies in the sky, but rather to look to our own efforts here below to make this world a fit place to live in, instead of the sort of place that the churches in all these centuries have made it. So he talks of human beings. He talks of human beings as responsible for changing the world, and he thinks that human beings, they can make this world a fit place to live in, and he does not believe that religion can change this world. Jean Paul Sartre, who is famous as existentialist, and he believes that existentialism is another form of humanism. He says, in life, man commits himself and draws his own portrait, outside of which there is nothing. So, this is very, very important that he says that there is only man, and outside man, there is nothing. No doubt this thought may seem harsh to someone who has not made a success of his life. That religion, according to him, is very important for those people who are not successful in life. But on the other hand, it helps people to understand that reality alone counts, and that dreams, expectations, and hopes only serve to define a man as a broken dream, aborted hopes, and futile expectations. So for him, the reality is important, existence is important, being is important. He does not believe in ideals, the ideals that are only ideas like expectations, hopes, dreams, etc. He believes in existence, he believes in living a real life. Sartre and Russell then share a humanism which is a belief in the human in opposition to a belief in God. Sartre was more hesitant than Russell's faith in science. He argues that the appropriate way of understanding human actions is importantly different from a scientific understanding of causally determined events in the natural world. So here we find difference of opinion between two giants of the 20th century, Sartre and Russell. Whereas Russell had unflinching faith in science, Sartre had more faith in human beings, in human nature. Now we come to the most important atheist of the contemporary era, Richard Dawkins. He says, faith is the greatest cop out, the greatest excuse to evade the need to think and evaluate evidence. Faith is the belief in spite of, even perhaps because of, the lack of evidence. So he believes that faith exists only because there is no evidence or nothing to support it. Now we have entered the era which is called post-human. Post-human is a concept originating in the fields of science fiction, futurology, art, and philosophy that literally means a person or entity that exists in a state beyond being human. The concept addresses questions of ethics and justice, language and trans-species communication, social systems, and the intellectual aspirations of interdisciplinarity. Francisca Frendo. Francisca Frendo affords particular focus to philosophical posthumanism, defined as philosophy of mediation, which addresses the meaning of humanity not in separation, but in relation to technology and ecology. The post human shift thus emerges in the global call for social change, responsible science, and multi species coexistence. So we find new terms here, like that of ecology, technology, multi species, and things like that. James Scott, man is to technology what the bee is to the flower. It is man's intervention that allows technology to expand and evolve itself, and in return, Technology offers man convenience, wealth, and lessening burden of physical labor via its automated systems. So, according to James Scott, there is a symbiotic relation between technology and man. Man develops technology, and man benefits from technology. Technology has become an important part of human existence. Cyborgification is simply the process of compensating technologically for the inherent limitations of natural man. So, according to him, technology compensates weaknesses of man. So, here is the conclusion. Human happiness is its own justification and requires no sanction or support from supernatural sources. That in any case, the supernatural usually conceived of in the form of heavenly gods or immortal heavens does not exist, and that human beings using their own intelligence and cooperating liberally with one another can build an enduring citadel of peace and beauty upon this earth. So we find a renewed focus on coexistence, peace. But what we find is that in post-human world, technology has overtaken man, and artificial intelligence has become the real intelligence and threatens to take over man. Thank you very much. Please like, subscribe, and share. God bless you.